The time that I spend here in the library, just interacting with the folks who are lending and the goodwill that comes from it, their appreciation as well as their their generosity. You know, they'll, like I say, they'll often bring back extra blades or you know, nails for the nail gun, or they'll come in and say, you know, I bought this tool for a project last week and I know I don't need it, so I'm going to give it to you right now. They put money in the donation box just because, you know, so they're very supportive and they're very appreciative.
This is Peak Moment. We are living at a peak of human innovation, information, wealth, and health. But we're also at a peak of population and consumption, with rising temperatures and declining resources fueled by cheap oil and gas. Peak Moment Television, bringing you examples of positive responses to energy decline and climate change through local community action.
Hi, welcome to Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. I'm in Portland in the Northeast. What if you wanted to just use a tool for a day or a week and you don't need to own it? You don't want to rent it. Your neighbor doesn't have one. Northeast Portland has figured out a wonderful way to do that and build community. I'm at the Northeast Portland Tool Library, and I'm with the founder, Tom Thompson, and the chairman of the board, Karen Tarnow. Thanks for joining me. So tell me, what is a tool library?
It's a community. It's a neighborhood. It's people coming together and sharing tools and hopefully making everybody's life just a little better. I hear stories every week from people about that they couldn't maintain their house, they couldn't keep up with the things that they want to do to improve their homes and their lives. And the tool library allows that because everyone doesn't have to run out and buy the tools they need to do the project. And it also offers an opportunity for people to be able to go out and spend the money that they might on buying a tool to buy what they need to do the job or the project. We have over 1,300 members now, and that's been accumulated. It just happens that today is our second anniversary. And if you think about just through community cooperation and people working together, we've accomplished in the last 2 years. To me, it's mind-boggling where we're at with over 1,300 members and over 1,600 tools.
Wow.
And out of the tools of 1,600, there's been over 1,200 donated to us. So there's a lot of what you see that's been just by people supporting us. And we've had support from the community with grants, and Par Lumber and the small hardwares around have been very supportive too. But just in people in general, and we're in the Redeemer Lutheran Church. We rent space from them in the basement. And we started out the very first week that we opened up in a one-car garage and 150 tools. And then we loaned 7 tools the first week. And we grew so quickly out of that pods loaned us, donated to use of a pod, so we had a garage and a pod that we were in through cold weather and everything else that went on. We were there.
Boy, it sounds like you just sprung into action and your community said yes.
You know, we did, and I'm not the only founder. Eric Fairlehman had the idea, and we met just right after he came up with started talking publicly about it, and I jumped on board. I've been a contractor for over 30 years, so I know tools and equipment to use, the application, the right tool for the job I can certainly suggest to someone. And he and I talked initially and became very close friends very quickly and managed to put it together. But then we had people come on board very quickly afterwards because there was so much enthusiasm about our tool library.
I want to pause for a second here and back up a second. Karen, how does it work? I mean, do people pay to join, whatever? Tell me how the functions operate.
We are one of 3 tool libraries in Portland, and if you live in this neighborhood that's defined by the Northeast Quadrant, if you have a Northeast address, you can be a member here. You need to bring in 2 forms of ID. Well, one form of ID, a government ID, a passport or driver's license, and then a piece of mail that confirms your address in the neighborhood. and you sign up and sign a piece of paper. It's kind of a liability thing too. And then you have lending privileges, and you can.
And that's it? I mean,
That's
it's not an annual fee or anything?
Nope, that's it. And our main day, we're open Saturdays, 9 to 2, and also Wednesday evenings for a couple hours. And when you borrow a tool, you need to bring it back the following week. And you're supposed to bring it back by 10 a.m. the next Saturday morning, so that it's back here for others to be able to take out. You can borrow up to 7 tools at a time. That's the basics.
And the range of tools that I see around me run from hand tools, garden tools, construction tools. What else? I mean,
But our only limitation is we don't have any gas-powered tools at all. We don't support or allow those to be loaned out.
so
A couple of reasons. One is just the environmental thing, and the other is just storage is a real problem for those types
yeah,
of
sure,
things.
you've got safety on that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yep.
I would imagine. I notice here, you've got volunteers, you've got things to be tracked. What do you do when a tool breaks? What happens? What do you?
If it's something that can be replaced pretty quickly and easily, because we don't have any paid staff at all.
You're all
And
volunteer.
everybody's a volunteer, and it takes some, I'm a skilled person with my hands, but I don't want to be repairing small power tools. And one of the problems is it often costs more to buy parts to repair something, and you can't take it down to the local repair place. It costs more. So we found a couple of places that we can recycle them, where they're broken apart and the metals and things are recycled out of them and put back into service through some other way. And we just, move on with the tools.
I think that we learn a little bit as we moved along about what tools work well for us and which ones don't. And I'm proudly acknowledge that I broke the first 2 power washers that we got, and they quickly told us that those were subpar. They had plastic attachment parts, and that kind of thing just isn't going to last.
So you need
in
some
a place like
durability
this.
with the tools.
So we need durability for the ones that we purchase. Now, the ones that are donated, which is the majority of our tools, we take what we can get. And sometimes, like he was saying, when they break, well, it was a 15-year-old power drill anyway, and, it's had a good life. And then it's a matter of, well, if the tool comes back broken, is that compensation appropriate for it or not? And, it's really great working here, the people that are bringing tools back. The majority of them will come back and say, well, the belt broke and I went and got a new one. Or, one of our other power washers, we have a hard time with power washers. They're just off the shelf now, but he really messed up the hose, and he went out and bought a new hose and returned it with a hose.
So that goes back to the spirit of community that you were talking
Yeah.
about, that people feel invested, sort of, in.
Right. Most people are pretty honest. We've had people had tools stolen out of their yard or out of their car, and most people are great as far as replacing them or coming in and saying, "Look, let me, pay for it, whatever." So, and the next question you could ask is, how are tool returns? Do people return tools on time? It's like a book lending library is basically what we are, but a tool lending library. People are late. People are, don't return tools. We have a really small percentage. I calculated just recently that we've loaned out, tool-wise, we've had over 6,000 tool loans since we first started. And if you consider that at this point, if you went through our late tool list, we probably have maybe 75 or 80 tools that are out. So if you consider the amount of tool loans we have had and the amount of tools that have not been returned, it's really a pretty small number. And most people, it's more a matter of they've forgotten them, they're misplaced, whatever. It's not really a malicious thing. It's just people get busy with their lives and don't return. But in general, people are great about it.
So you must have multiples then. I mean, multiple drills, multiple.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
To be able to do that.
And it depends on the time. Depends on the time of year too. Excuse me. It depends on the time of year what it is. Just like if you look at the wall behind me with all the shovels and rakes and everything, if you were here 2 months ago, there was nothing
Empty,
there.
I bet. Everybody's
We
getting
have
their gardens.
extras and seconds in the back. right now you're kind of starting to get into late summer and fall, and people are looking for weed eaters and things like that because the weeds are still up, but the grass isn't being mowed anymore. So there are mowers around. So it really changes with the time of year. In the wintertime, they'll use more interior carpentry kind of tools and tile tools, things like that. One thing I'd like to add to this is that we not only loan tools to people, but we loan them to groups, nonprofits, churches, schools, all sorts of different organizations. We've now started loaning tools to. We had one last spring that they borrowed 100 tools from us and did a huge cleanup. This is a church that borrowed it and did all this work around a school. Earth Day, we had 3 different groups that borrowed tools from us, just stripped us of tools. So it's, you know, that's a huge reward for us too, is to be able to help communities, services like that.
How do people find out about you, and how do people know how to donate tools, and you know how do
people talk?
Oh, yeah. But
we
when you
stopped
started,
doing
did you just
promoting.
do it? Really?
We stopped doing promoting the tool library over a year ago, just because at that point we had grown. In fact, we had gotten a grant, and it was so funny. And I'm like so excited. Let's do this huge flyer delivery in the neighborhood. And somebody says, "We're growing pretty quick. Let's." And yeah, a year ago we were at about 700 members, and we're at 1,300 now. So we're growing very, very quickly. Yeah, so there's no outreach anymore being done other than just things that we participate in as a support to the neighborhood.
And there's been a couple of newspaper articles last winter and just about a month ago, and we did a press release for our anniversary party today, our Tulapalooza.
Tulapalooza. That's cool.
Yeah, that was Karen's idea. I like it.
But also, the way I got involved is I just saw the sign on the street when we open. We take out these wooden signs and say tool library with an arrow. And we happen to be in a great location on a pretty busy corner street. So there's a lot of traffic going through here. And every time that we're open, we get people walking in that say, "What's a tool library?
Right.
And can I buy tools?" And we have to go through the spiel. And that's, I think, a good percentage of our, maybe 25% are just people that just happen to see this and we're curious about it.
So tell me, what do you think is rewarding? I see you've got a bunch of volunteers. What's it like for people to be part of this?
Speaking for myself, the time that I spend here in the library, just interacting with the folks who are lending and the goodwill that comes from it, their appreciation as well as their their generosity. They'll, like I say, they'll often bring back extra blades or nails for the nail gun, or they'll come in and say, I bought this tool for a project last week and I know I don't need it, so I'm going to give it to you right now. They put money in the donation box just because, so they're very supportive and they're very appreciative, and it's great to spend time here and feel that.
One of the great things that I've seen that has come from this whole thing is that the North Tool Library in Portland started 6 years ago. We started 2 years ago, and we helped the Southeast Tool Library start, and they've been open a couple of months now. We donated a computer program and hard copies of agreements and things. We also donated a couple of 100 tools to them as a seed to get started. Portland, within the city limits of Portland, we have more tool libraries than any other city in the country. And one other thing that I would like to share that we have is we also have a seed lending library. That it's free. It's right over here in these cases, and we pass out seeds to people for their gardens in the spring, and thousands of seeds are taken out for free. And there are seed savers that in the spring and in the fall that bring seeds and restock it. And so we're also doing a community service there. There's one other little thing. There in the Northeast Portland, just down the street, there are 2 ladies that are working on starting a household goods library. So there are many other types of libraries that are in the process of kind of being put together that I think are going to grow and occur over there.
That's exciting. I think so. I think that whole thing of sharing.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
When we weren't all affluent and they all thought we were only consumers, we shared because we had to, and we shared because we wanted to, and we shared because we knew our neighbors. And you are reinstituting that here in your neighborhood.
And it's very much the spirit of Portland, too.
For sure.
yeah, it fits in real well here. It's very well supported.
I could imagine that's what we've discovered here, and you know, we from elsewhere kind of look to Portland as like, because you're always a few steps ahead of others in terms of that kind of consciousness. So I salute you.
In a sense, some people would think we're a few steps behind because we aren't all owning our own lawnmowers and power drills and all that, and you know, so it depends on your perspective as to how
From
you
the
might
peak
view it.
moment perspective, you're way ahead of
Thank you.
many. Thank you so much. I want to take a pause here and meet with Steve to talk about what the next, you know, someone taking inspiration from you and other tool to start a tool library. So thank you both for joining me.
Great.
Tom mentioned that other libraries are opening, and my guest now that's joining us is Steve Cooch, who is the co-founder, I guess I would say, of the Southeast Portland Tool Library. Is that right?
Actually, probably say the founder,
Founder.
because the story was essentially contacting our sustainability coordinator with our neighborhood coalition, and saying, why don't we have a tool library in Southeast? We said, well, no one has wanted to spend enough time to make it happen, I guess you could say.
Okay. And so you said, well, then I will.
That's kind of the way it was.
And how did that start? What did you do to begin?
Well, I talked to Tim, who's the sustainability coordinator, and just kind of, well, let's start setting up some meetings, see how many people come. And so they got the word out in their newsletter, and I think we had 3 people, and Tom, and actually I think Katie was also there at our first meeting. So to kind of get, what do we need to do to get a tool library going?
And then what?
We kept having meetings. and then actually a grant opportunity came up for a small grant, and so I submitted that. The other thing I think is really important is finding a location. So a couple of the people that were at the early meeting said, well, we think we know some places, so we'll check them out.
Okay.
And that's happened, and one of them worked out.
Okay. So you two are at a church.
We are also at a
place.
church, yes.
And then how did you begin to get tools and, you know, open shop?
Well, similar to actually Northeast Tool Library donated a bunch of tools
Ah, nice.
to our cause. And some of those we still, well, a bunch of them we still use. And we got, you know, I contacted some people with a couple of the neighborhood papers, Southeast Examiner and the Selwood Bee, and we got some articles and let people know that we were looking for tools. And then similar to Northeast, they had the article in the Oregonian. Well, Tom actually contacted that person, said, or in conversation said, well, there's one starting up in Southeast too. So that person contacted me, and so we were able to at least get the contact information into the newspaper.
So people began contacting you through publicity
Yes.
in your community, both for tool donations and to just. And when did you begin? How much later you began opening your doors?
Well, I can almost say about almost 1 year, actually 11 months.
Okay. Okay. So you've been open a couple of months by now. How many folks do you have that have been borrowing tools?
We have, I would guess that we're probably approaching 400. I mean, last time,
That's a good number.
Last time I was there 2 weeks ago now, we were at 330 or something. So yeah.
How about tools?
Yeah.
Tools were probably 600 tools.
Wow. That's a lot of tools to have.
I mean, that
pulled
includes
together.
everything from screwdrivers on up, but yeah.
But that
It's amazing.
counts.
Yeah.
That
It does.
counts.
It
So,
does.
and have you gotten tool donations from any from individuals or businesses or?
It's been primarily from individuals. You know, we actually, one fellow, I guess I want to call our tool benefactor, he hasn't been in touch with me for a little while, I mean for a couple of months I think, but you know, he's donated some incredible tools.
And I didn't ask you both. I want to get back to the thing about fixing tools. It would seem to me that it would be really nice for some tools that can be fixed to have a fix-it person on your volunteer staff.
We're working on that.
Yes, you are.
And it's, you know, there are people there that definitely have the skills and have voiced the interest. And part of it is coordinating that trade-off, how to figure out what are the tools that need fixing, enable them to get in here on off hours to be able to fix it. So we don't have that system up and running yet, but it does have potential. But then again, a number of the tools that break, it might be the motors burned out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we don't have a lot of tools that are actually repairable. And most of them that come in that are pretty simple repairs, Tom's off and around and he'll just deal with it right then and there.
Okay. Handy to have somebody. I want to ask sort of how many volunteers you have that work on this, and kind of what are the tasks that volunteers have to do?
Well, for the most part, at least at Southeast, I would guess our volunteer group is maybe 25 to 30, but a very small percentage of those, probably a handful, are your regular returning volunteers, and mostly it's for, you know, the hours when we're open, but we also utilize volunteers. Like we had a rain barrel workshop. We got some materials donated from the rebuilding center here in North Portland, and we had 4 people, I'd say 3 people, and I was kind of like, I was cheering them on, but you know, I helped a little bit, maybe pounded a few nails, but we put essentially a decking for the 4 rain barrels that we put in.
Okay.
And we maybe have, I don't know, I'm guessing 40 to 50 people, but there's probably, 20 or 25 that are real regulars. And by regular, what I mean is they'll take a shift. We'll have an early shift and a late shift each Saturday, and then there's a Wednesday shift. And we have 2 to 3 people for each shift. And so what we've aspired to is to have somebody committed to 1 shift a month, so that we always have somebody we can count on, and then the other slots can be filled. We just have a sign-up sheet for that.
Okay.
But it reached a crisis moment a couple months ago. There are a number of us that were away or something, and we didn't have enough people to cover on a Saturday, and we were talking amongst the board members about we should just not open, and that will let our membership know that we need help. We really need help. And we talked it through and put a last minute email out to our volunteers, and we got plenty of coverage. But while we were open that day and the next following days, well, particularly while we were open that day, we'd stand up and say, we almost didn't open today because we didn't have enough people to cover. We really need volunteers. And as soon as we started talking about that and announcing it when our tool library was open, we got a lot of people signing up, and people that just said, I didn't realize that you needed this help. I really want to help out.
I think you know, when you walk in, you come in, there's somebody at the desk and a computer and keeping track of things. We are so used to, in this consumer society, to businesses. People are paid to do things, that we assume that because that's the default. And to realize that this is all volunteer, which is staggering to me, a lot of work and dedication here. I think it's important to message, as well as your welcoming tool donations. Right. It would seem to me that you need to tell, this is your tool library, we need that from you.
And we actually, I mean, that's how both of us come across. If you go to our websites, it's like, you know, this is your tool library. And, you know, it's, we're dependent on you to help it function. You know, whether you bring in tools that maybe you're not using regularly or something like that. You know, and people do that. But they don't, I think like you said, they don't fully get it, that these are volunteers sitting behind the desk, checking in, checking out tools.
Yeah, yeah. Any other challenges here in our last couple of minutes? Any other challenges that or advice you could give to other people who want to get started? Obviously a lot of meetings to get going, and we have a model. For example, do you guys have guidelines that say, here's your sort of checklist to give to people to get going, or?
Yeah, we have a one-pager that basically says here's how we work, here's the rules for borrowing tools, and these are the kinds of things. that kind of information, the sign-up information that we've shared with other tool libraries and probably would make available to anybody.
Okay.
The database was something that we were given from the North Portland Tool Library, and we passed it on to
To the
Southeast.
Southeast,
And
yeah.
what is the database? What is that? I mean, what are you tracking?
The database tracks the tools. I mean, we actually have an inventory of all the tools that are in the library. They each have a number.
Ah,
So,
okay.
you know, and then it also tracks the, you know, people that are members of the tool library. And we actually also have a volunteer database as well. So, I mean, it's something that all communities could use.
It strikes me as an idea whose time has come. Certainly, the economy is making that more real.
Well, it's come back. I mean, tool libraries lending tools to neighbors and tool cooperatives are ages old. You know, particularly in the farming agricultural communities. And actually, I think what I've heard is the first tool library of this sort opened over 20 years ago in North Carolina, somewhere, Atlanta, I think. So,
Well,
it's
there actually was one
generation.
in Southeast, you know, 15 to 20 years ago. And there are some small ones. I mean, people used to share an awful lot more, I think, in foregone years. And certainly if you talk to people that went through the Depression,
Of course.
I mean, they did. They realized that they had to share. And how many tools do you have in your collection that you maybe use, you know, at most 2 or 3 times, 4 times a year?
Exactly. Yeah, I've thought about that. We're in a rural area, so it's going to be, you know, probably little subgroups, not in the middle of town necessarily, but our area.
Right.
To have an area tool library, and then, and I think that what I want to add is that the guidelines you give about how you solve particular challenges would be a very helpful thing to give to groups. Not only how did you get started, but when you ran into this obstacle, how did you solve it? Because I think that passing on advice will be valuable to folks.
I don't think we've written that down yet, but
encourage
we'll
you to
talk
do
about
that.
it.
There is talk of, I mean, Tom and I have talked about pulling, you know, together with the North Portland Tool Library person and having a meeting where we actually start getting that stuff down.
That'd
It's like
be
how to
really
open
great.
a tool library for dummies sort of package, so that anybody anywhere
That's
can pick it up
fabulous.
and do it.
Okay.
It wouldn't be hard to do.
When I come back to tape you guys in 2 years, I want that done and another dozen libraries started all over, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you both for joining, for your volunteer work, for joining us, for inspiring people. And you want to start a tool library, right? We'll leave you the website URLs. You contact these folks and bug them to find out how to do it. You're watching Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. My guests are with the Portland Tool Libraries, a couple of different ones. Steve Couch, Karen Tarnow. Join us next time.